Welcome to Bonnet and Blade. Today we're still in Caithness. We're on our way back down the North Coast 500, and I want to talk to you about a subject that's actually quite sad.
Today's video is about the Highland Clearances, particularly the village of Badbea.
So let's go and explore what this village was really like. How dangerous was it? Was it somewhere they could make a living, or was it not? Let's go and investigate.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm sounding a little croaky today, I apologise. I am. I've got a terribly sore throat, but I want to get this video up and out for you today, so I apologise if it sounds like I'm trying to be husky and all sexy. I really am not. It's just the voice isn't working at the moment, so please bear with me. Have you ever been to a prisoner of war camp or a battlefield where happiness just seems to have disappeared? A bit like in the Harry Potter scenes with the Dementors, where they suck the happiness out. That's how it feels when you attend. If you've been, you'll understand what I mean. There are places where the earth itself remembers, in stone walls, in hidden field systems, in ruinous slopes that once held life. Among these, the Highland Clearances are not simply an event in memory. They are stories carried on the wind, whispered through heather and the bracken, and etched into the land itself. Between the late 18th and the early 20th century, thousands of families were uprooted from their farms and their crofts, the townships that their ancestors had tended for generations. Fields lay fallow, homes abandoned, and communities scattered. This was gradual, sorrowful, and profound. Between the late 18th and 20th century, thousands of families were uprooted from their farms and townships they and their ancestors had tended for generations. Fields lay fallow, homes abandoned, and communities scattered. This was gradual, sorrowful, and profound. And in places like Badbea, that story remains written across the hillside. Badbea, a settlement not chosen but created out of necessity, a place both harsh and beautiful, a place of memory. In 1746, the Battle of Culloden marked more than a decisive defeat for the Jacobite cause. It marked the beginning of a new era, one in which the old Highland way of life, rooted in the clan system, slowly began to dissolve. Bonds of kinship that had defined generations were strained by forces few could have foreseen. After Culloden lands were confiscated, chiefs who had once protected their people saw their authority undermined, and culture, expression, and even language were restricted. In this shifting world, landholding transformed. Estates were no longer places of community stewardship. They became economic ventures, measured not in livestock and crops, but in profit. As the 18th century advanced, many landlords, influenced by the agricultural improvement, recognised estates. Fields that once sustained families were fenced for sheep. Rents were demanded in money rather than in grain of labour. The land that had nurtured generations was now a commodity. Families who had lived for generations in fertile glens were displaced. Entire townships that had existed for centuries were carved up. Tenants were asked, or even ordered, to move on to marginal lands, sometimes hundreds of miles away. The vision was progress. Sheep were efficient, they brought income and promised prosperity. For the people, the cost was immeasurable. And for how long? Did the sheep last? Well, that's for later. Men who had known only life in their community were told to relocate to coastal slopes. Poor, windswept, hostile to crops, fields that once grew oats and potatoes became narrow strips on the rock. Soil barely held life, yet families carved homes and fields from the hillside. They learned to fish, to gather, to make what little they had stretch just a little further. Sutherland, one of the largest estates, became symbolic of the sweeping changes reshaping the Highlands. Landowners, convinced of sheep grazing's profitability, cleared communities on a massive scale. Thousands of tenants were removed from their lands that had sustained them for generations. While sheep brought income, the promise, prosperity was fragile. Harsh weather, thin soil, and economic fluctuations changed many flocks. So for a short-term gain, for these large landowners, they destroyed communities, they destroyed the crofting way of life, and the hereditary croft system, as we knew back then, was disappeared for 30 years approximately of sheep farming. And yet by then the human cost was irreversible. Communities had vanished, social bonds dissolved, and the traditions were all left behind. The Napier Commission in the 1880s sought to record the experiences of those who had lived through the clearances. Yet the testimonies revealed horrors that were almost unimaginable. Crops were left rotting in the fields. Homes were pulled apart, stone by stone. Families were driven from their land their ancestors had tended for generations. Some tenants were evicted in the dead of night, woken abruptly by shouting. The thunder of boots, the barking of dogs was used to intimidate them. Children clutching what few belongings they could carry, crying in confusion and fear. Mothers carried infants stumbling across the rocky slopes while the wind and rain cut at their faces. The elderly were forced to leave their homes, sometimes lifted and carried by neighbours because they could not walk, or they were dragged from their cottages as the land agents demanded compliance. Smoke rose from the cottages deliberately set alight to make resistance impossible. Flames consumed the hearths. Memories and years of hard work. Land agents and landlords driven by profit acted with brutal efficiency. Threats, intimidation, and even violence were tools of eviction. These were not isolated events. Across the Highlands, countless families faced this relentless cruelty. Their lives upended on the whim of distant estate offices. Their homes turned into empty fields for sheep. And the land itself, seemed to conspire against them. Badbea sits on a steep hillside, above the cliffs of the North Sea in Caithness, the land unforgiving, yet chosen by necessity. Evicted families from Langwell and Ousdale and other straths arrived. There was little to bring but hope and courage. Crofts were carved into stone, homes built from rock that were gathered from the hillside. The sea roared below, unrelentless and ever-present. Settlers planted whatever crops the soil would allow. The wind was battering from the sea. The livestock was minimal. A few sheep, cows, chickens, all tethered to prevent them from tumbling down the cliff. Each day was a test of endurance, patience and willpower. Life at Badbea was a constant struggle. The wind was relentless. Rain and sea spray lashed the homes. Children played along narrow paths, clinging to stone walls. Livestock, sheep, goats, a cow or two, had to be tethered to stop them all falling from the cliffs. Men worked the herring season, rowing boats in icy waters. The women tended to the crofts and preserved the fish and managed the households. Children learned to survive early, fetching water, collecting firewood and helping secure animals against the wind. Every day demanded vigilance. Ordinary tasks, chopping turf, mending roofs, planting crops, all carried risk, yet the families endured. They read the moods of the weather and protected their young and ensured survival for the people and their animals alike. Remember, these were farmers, not fishermen. Some 60-year-old men were learning new skills and going to sea for the first time. This was true hardship and determination. Amid the hardship, Badbea forged a community. They had a lay preacher, John Sutherland. John Badbea became a spiritual anchor, leading worship and reading scripture. Faith offered comfort where the wind brought only cold. Gatherings for news, celebration of births and weddings, music and Gaelic song provided warmth against the relentless elements. In this village, survival was as much a spiritual as it was physical. Over decades, Badbea's population dwindled. Fishing declined. Younger generations left for wider opportunities. The roofs collapsed. The crofts ruined to grass and bracken. In 1911, the last resident, Alexander Sutherland, passed away. The village, once alive with toil, laughter and prayer, lay silent. Stones and walls remained, witness to a century of endurance, struggle and resilience. Today, Badbea is a testament to human resilience. The stones whisper stories, The wind carries memories. The sea crashes below as it did when families first arrived, when they fought to make homes here, when children played and animals grazed perilously along the cliff edge. The memorial cairn, built by the son of Alexander Sutherland, stands as a tribute to those who lived, endured and remembered the land itself of memories. History is written not only in books, but across these hills and cliffs. And here at Badbea, life once clung to the edge, and in that memory, it lives still today. A thought for you to leave with is our generation would never survive this. We just wouldn't. We are made not of the sterner stuff our forefathers were. We're used to our creature comforts, our running hot water, our central heating and electricity. If we had been evicted in the middle of our nights from our homes, we'd be looking for the government to help hand out and give us something to do. But can you imagine back then when nobody was interested, nobody cared, and you had to survive for yourself? Just take a second to think how our ancestors must have felt and what they must have endured. It's nothing like we can comprehend today.
Well, now that we've seen it, was it worth it? Was the sheep worth evicting these families for? If you're looking to try and find a silver lining, the only silver lining that I can find is the Scottish culture has been spread throughout the world to the new worlds. We've got Highland games. Some of the biggest Highland games in the world now are in Canada and America. That's a great thing for us Scots to know about. Our Scottish culture and heritage is going on and growing, and throughout the world the Scots have a great reputation of being a friendly nation. That is encouraging. So that's the silver lining. The sad bit is that sheep were more important than human lives. Families that had had centuries crofting on these hills were evicted. And what of today? Today we still drive along the roads and see the ruined crofts just left, burnt out, no roofs, no woodwork left, just the stones standing. There's no housing developments, there's no big estates, just huge vast expanses of nothingness. Not even great expanses of farming now. So what's here? Well, what is here is landed gentry large shoots. And I'm not against that. Please don't think I am. Because you have to move with the times of what's present. And this land would go to rack and ruin if somebody wasn't managing it. So the gamekeepers are managing it and doing a fantastic job of doing so. But if we'd had farming crofts here, would we be trying to scrape a living through commercial shoots? Or would the farming be giving us food and making us more self-sufficient? Food for thought. I'll let you think of that one, and you can come up with your own ideas. But from me, Grant, and cameraman, research assistant, and general everything else, and main support, Jess, we're going to say goodbye and see you next time. And the next videos will be back in Dumfries and Galloway. So from here up on the North Coast 500, up in Caithness, we'll see you next time. And hopefully when we come back up here, we'll have some other exciting places to take you, because we will be back.